Well, hello and happy Sunday or whatever day it happens to be that you're watching this if you're not watching live. Welcome to the Pet Parenting Reset. I'm Jessica Fisher, and today we have a really fun and very important topic to talk about, which are carbs in our pets' food and how to calculate if you were feeding a kibble. So I actually have some props here today. Let me grab them. So I went and it's funny because I have not been in a pet food aisle in a store in a very long time. And I was looking at all of the different foods, and a lot of companies like this one actually have diets for different like size dogs, and it they didn't used to have that. So it was interesting to see a lot of the changes that are going on, but the packaging, oh my goodness. But calculating carbs is what we're talking about today. So let's first start out with, we're going to go through a calculation. It's really simple math, and I'm going to break it down for you. But let's first talk about carbohydrates and why this is important for our pets. Also, if you are watching live, you can go ahead and post in the comment section if you have any comments, if you have any questions, and I can reply to you while we're live. If you're watching a recording of this, that's okay too. You can go ahead and post in the comments, and I will get a notification and come back and answer you as well. So hopefully these go so much better when they are interactive. So go ahead and comment. Even if you just want to say hi, let me know you're here, you're watching. Let me know a little bit about you and your pets, how many pets you have, if you have a dog or a cat or both like me. And I know I could have just done this. And if you're part of the Patreon family, you got, I took pictures of the bags and the guaranteed analysis and everything. And I could have just pulled all of this stuff off of the internet. But of course, you guys know that Betty White passed away. So I actually already had a box full of stuff that I have decluttered from my house that is pet related stuff, toys, clothing that Kim doesn't wear or need, doesn't fit her, lots of different stuff like that. So I just decided to go ahead and buy a couple of bags and donate them along with it, because the thing and the reason I brought up Betty White is because it's a challenge now, like a social media challenge, right? To go to your local animal shelter or rescue or humane society on January 17th, which would have been her 100th birthday, and donate a minimum of $5. Of course, I'm going to, donate some money as well, but I also have a bunch of stuff that I'm going to take over there. So let's see. We do have a few people here, which is wonderful. JR says we have pets. Let me know more about that, JR. Thank you. Susan says I have a 6-pound Yorkie. Let me put this up on the screen. I have a 6-pound Yorkie, and I give her 1 teaspoon of cooked oatmeal each day. Is that correct for her home cooked diet? So Susan, let me go ahead and answer you as best I can before we get into today's topic. So adding, Dr. Karen Becker calls them core longevity toppers, or CLTs. Adding to your fresh food to your pet's kibble is incredible, is amazing, is wonderful to do, especially if you are on a budget and kibble is going to be the primary source of nutrition for your pet, the primary source of balanced nutrition for your pet. Now, adding in cooked oatmeal, and there are lots of different kinds of oatmeal out there. So first and foremost, we would want to make sure that it is whole grain, and that it doesn't have any added sugars or preservatives or anything like that to it. But basically, it's adding a carbohydrate on top of a carbohydrate. Now, one of the things that I'm getting ready to talk about is that there are differences. Like, not all carbs are created equal. Okay, so Susan, you said it is a home cooked diet. So adding, not knowing what the home cooked diet is, hopefully it's a balanced diet. But adding in whole grains, those carbohydrates, if they are whole grains, are a lot easier for the body to digest, and any nutrient gained from them it is much easier. Now, carbohydrates are in all plant matter, so that includes fruits and vegetables, and that's one of the reasons why we can't just put a blanket statement out there and say that carbohydrates are bad. That's not true. That's not the case. Because not all carbohydrates are created equal. Carbohydrates that are easy to break down, so they're going to be short chain carbohydrates, like in whole grains, like in fruits, like in vegetables, that have not been processed. That food also has fiber in it, are going to be better types of carbohydrates, because the body, as it's breaking down the carbohydrate in conjunction with the fiber helps slow the digestion of that carbohydrate, meaning that if you were to eat, say, a slice of bread, right, that carbohydrate is going to spike your blood sugar and then you're going to get a crash. Or if you eat a dessert or a piece of candy, it's going to spike your blood sugar and then you're going to get a crash. When you eat a whole carbohydrate, so you're eating like a strawberry or a blueberry or an apple or a whole grain, you're getting that carbohydrate in conjunction with a fiber, which is going to help regulate your blood sugar and process that carbohydrate over time. So that's kind of the difference in a very, very I'm not a scientist kind of way of explaining it. So depending on what is in your home cooked diet, Susan, you may or may not need to add that. I would imagine you're adding it for fiber. But there are great ways to add fiber using low glycemic green vegetables. Green juju is a great way to add low glycemic vegetables that are fiber rich to your pet's diet, if you are looking to do so. So I hope that makes sense. It's not like a cut and dry yes or no answer for you, Susan, especially since I don't know what your home cooked diet is. But basically, yeah, so that was kind of the sciencey portion of what I wanted to talk about today anyway, in a very non-scientific way of saying it. So dogs are carnivores. If I could talk. Dogs are carnivores, right? We know that. That means that a carnivore is an animal that feeds on flesh. Cats are obligate carnivores, meaning that they also feed on flesh, and that makes up at least 70% of their diet. And they cannot properly digest vegetation. So those are the two prerequisites of being an obligate carnivore, which is the difference in cats and dogs. Neither cats nor dogs have a nutritional need for carbohydrates, though it's important to note again that not all carbohydrates are created equal. So we just kind of went over the more sciencey part of carbohydrates and why knowing the difference in carbohydrates matters. What's also important to know for cats specifically, that while they have no biological need for carbohydrates, they do ingest the stomach contents of their prey animals. So it's generally recognized that cats in the wild will eat about 3% of their daily intake is going to be about 3% carbohydrates. But it is important to note that when they ingest these carbohydrates, they are pre-digested because they were in the stomachs of their prey. And that's important because as obligate carnivores, they don't create the enzyme amylase, which is needed to digest and break down the plant matter on their own. Dogs, as carnivores, have evolved to be able to break down some plant matter, but to be able to digest and pull nutrients from plants, it's better to serve them poached or parboiled. You can also puree them. This will help the plant matter to begin to break down prior to your dog ingesting it, which gives their bodies a head start that they need to utilize the nutrients. So to be clear, dogs still don't produce the enzyme amylase, like we were just talking about with cats, in their saliva to be able to digest the plant matter. But through evolution, their pancreas now can break down some plant matter, which is why it's important to help them out by steaming or pureeing the fruits and or veggies before actually feeding them. So let's see. Susan says 75% meat and 25% vegetables plus organic supplements. So first, Susan, I would highly recommend the quickest, easiest, least expensive way, I think, to go about getting a balanced recipe is through the Planet Paws website. Of course, you can hire people to create custom meal plans for you. And there are two that I know of for dogs specifically that do really, really well, Perfectly Rawsome and Dog Dad. But that's not necessarily where I would say to start off with, especially if you have a healthy dog, because saying 75% meat and 25% vegetables for your dog, I'm wondering where the bone and the calcium's coming from, which generally is going to be from bone. And I'm also wondering where the organ meats are. Those, especially kidney. Well, I mean, you need more than just kidney as far as organ meat in a diet, but we're definitely, I'm wondering where the organ meat is, and I'm wondering where the calcium is coming from. So I would definitely, the Planet Paws website, if you click on recipes, it's I don't even know how they do it, but the recipes, Dr. Karen Becker actually helped create them. They are completely balanced. Some of them are raw, some of them are cooked, some of them you can cook. So bone, of course, you can't cook. So you would probably use a calcium supplement like eggshell or another calcium supplement. But they have cooked recipes as well, and they are insanely inexpensive. I don't even know how they do it. They're so inexpensive. So I would definitely recommend checking that out. That way you know you're balancing your meals for your dog. Some people like to balance over time, and that's great too. But again, they are generally people who are feeding raw food diets are the ones who do the best at balancing over time, because they can get the bone in there. Their dogs eat organ meats. There's a lot that goes into putting a balance into a dog's diet. But since you do want to cook, let me see here. I thought the nutrients for organic meats and calcium would be included in a complete vitamin and mineral supplement. So it depends on the supplement, and it's also, supplements are interesting because, in my opinion, and it depends on where you read and who you're referencing, who you're reading. In my opinion, it's best to get as much nutrition from whole foods as possible before adding in supplementation, because the body is going to utilize whole food nutrition in a much different way than it is in a synthetic form. And there are supplements out there that especially for pets, it's very, very highly unregulated. So knowing exactly, it's also really hard for a company to say, okay, you add in, XYZ and add in our supplement and it's complete and balanced. The reason for that is because, was that, ground beef that, just as an example, is that ground beef that you're adding, is it grass-fed? Is it not grass-fed? Is it grass-fed and grass-finished? There's a difference there. Are you using an 80-20 or are you using a 9-10, meaning the fat content? That all of that is going to drastically change the balance of nutrients in a recipe. So it's really hard for a supplement company to be able to say, just add this and you're good to go. So that's why I say definitely check out. My very first recommendation for a home cooked diet, Dr. Judy Morgan has a book called Yin and Yang Nutrition for Dogs, which I have I've talked about a few times on my channel. The recipes in that book are not necessarily balanced, though. You would have to rotate through recipes to achieve balance, but that might also be a good place for you to start if you choose to do so. Jennifer says, hi, do you need to have it balanced when feeding fresh as a topper with kibble? So what's really interesting is about feeding fresh foods on top of kibble is that you're just doing better than. And again, we're talking about synthetic. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know that kibble is high heat processed, generally 4 times over, which means at the end of the day, there is little to no nutrition left in the end product. So they have to add in supplements. They have to add in a huge mixture of supplements. They're chemical compounds that, quite honestly, most of them come out of China. They're synthetic supplements that are designed to provide the minimum nutrient requirements according to, in the USA, it's going to be AFCO, the American Association for Feed and something, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's AFCO. And again, those synthetic supplements are not as they're not as easily digestible. You're not necessarily, the body isn't going to be able to utilize them in the same way that they're going to be able to utilize nutrients from a whole food source. So when we add, which I was just talking about earlier, Dr. Becker calls CLTs or core longevity toppers, to our dog's kibble diet, we're adding on some whole fresh food nutrition for our dog, and your dog's body is going to say, oh yes, gimme, and they're going to process those nutrients in a very different way from the nutrients that are synthetic from the kibble. So while they're going to technically get the balance from the kibble, they're getting like that bonus. It's like icing on the cake, basically, except in a good, healthy way for our dogs when we're adding fresh food. And that's actually one of the things I was going to talk about today, was adding fresh food to the diet. But really quickly, because I don't want to take up too much more of your time today, like I said, I bought a bag of cat food and I bought a bag of dog food so that we can see what, just by using the guaranteed analysis, roughly how many actual carbohydrates are in this product. So if we look at, and I did the math ahead of time so I wouldn't have to embarrass myself. Now, if you are on Patreon, if you're part of the Patreon family, you got like screenshots and all the wonderful, information ahead of time on this. But if we look at the guaranteed analysis on this bag of cat chow, now again, this is just what it is. I'm not calling out any brands. I just randomly picked these off the shelf. Protein is 34%. So let me pull this here so you can see while I'm talking. Protein is 34%. Fat is 9%. Fiber is 5.1%. Moisture is 12%. Ash is not listed. So what you want to do in a bag of dry food, which we call kibble, is add up protein, fat, fiber, moisture, and ash, and subtract 100. And what you're left with is the percentage of carbohydrates in the bag, so are in a portion of food. Now, if ash is not listed, which I have yet to find a bag that ash is listed, but I haven't looked at every single bag out there either. We know that the industry is between 4 and 8%, so we're just going to take the average of 6%. So we know we're right in that average range. And so I'm going to take ash at 6%. I'm going to add all of those up and subtract 100. What I'm left with, if I could talk, what I'm left with is 33.9% carbohydrate in a serving. Now, if you remember from earlier, I was talking about cats being obligate carnivores, and the idea that, take this off the screen. The idea that a cat in the wild, the only carbohydrate they're really getting is what they ingest inside of from eating their prey's stomach. So it's generally they say about 3% of their diet is going to be carbohydrate based on the contents of their prey animal stomach. That being said, feeding a house cat and feeding a cat in the wild are pretty similar, should be pretty similar, but still a little bit different. So a good amount of carbohydrate in a house cat's diet would be about 7%. We're looking at 33.9% in this bag, which is about the average you're going to see. So moving along to the dog food that I grabbed, which again, I just grabbed these and I'm not picking on any brands. These are just facts. We're looking at the exact same calculation. So we're going to take protein, fat, fiber, moisture, and ash, add all of those together and subtract 100. Again, ash is not listed on this, so I'm going to take the industry average of 6%. Protein is 30%, fat is 15%, fiber is 6%, moisture is 10%. And again, I'm just going to take the industry average of 6% for ash, subtract that from 100, and I'm going to get 33% carbohydrates in a serving of this food, which I think is funny because it says nature's evolutionary diet. But anyway, figuring out how many carbohydrates a dog should have is not super cut and dry. And the one thing I want everyone to take away from this is to feed the animal in front of you, which you may have 3 dogs and they all have different requirements, right? So you may have one dog that is super hyper bouncing off the wall, and another dog who is very mellow, mild, calm demeanor. Those 2 dogs should not be eating the same thing, right? We need to realize that this is not a one size fits all type deal. Now, if you look at the Forever Dog book, which I haven't brought up too terribly much, but it is an incredible book. I did finally finish reading it, and Dr. Karen Becker and Rodney Habib, who wrote the book, suggest that dogs consuming a meal with 30% plus carbohydrates equates to a child eating nothing but fast food. While I tend to agree with that, based on the fact that I have fed many pets over many years and I see huge differences in the animals I feed today versus the animals I fed kibble to in the past, the reality is that we need to feed the animal in front of us. So some researchers say that a wolf's diet could potentially consist of as little as 2% carbs. But again, the reality is we're not feeding wolves, we're feeding dogs. And dogs have been domesticated over many thousands of years. So while they are most closely related to gray wolves, they are not gray wolves. So the bottom line is it's not a cut and dry exactly how many carbs should every dog in the world ever eat. It's more about feeding the animal in front of you. And again, I am very much aware that there is a need for kibble, right? There's a need. One, a lot of people, and I get this, I've totally been there, is that budget is the biggest factor in not only what we feed ourselves, but also what we feed our pets. So we also can't forget about the rescue and shelter system. These animals are in need, and I would much rather see a dog or a cat being fed than starving, right? So there is definitely room. Like there's room for this, and there's a need for it. I totally get it. However, like Jennifer brought up, it's also is definitely a really good idea to take whatever it is that we can afford to feed our pet, right? Even if we know that it may not be the absolute best thing for them, but it's what we can do right now. We're doing the best we can, and add some fresh foods on top of it to really amp up and give our dogs the absolute best we can in nutrition. So this is a very, very short list of a few things that you're generally going to be able to find in most kitchens that you can add to your pet's food are going to be fresh meat. Even like if you are cleaning meat that you're getting ready to cook for yourself or your family, those scraps that you have left over, that's incredible to add to your pet's food. Canned sardines in water, no salt added. I love adding these for so many reasons. They're really, really great. High nutrient, very nutrient dense. And you're also going to get the additional, omegas because you're adding fish. Broccoli, especially the stems. Look, I much prefer the floret and not the stem. So when I chop off the stem from the piece of broccoli, why not go ahead and cut that up a little bit more? You can puree it, you can gently steam it, and go ahead and add that on top of your dog's food as well. Blueberries are great, carrots are great, avocado, just the flesh, not the peel, not the pit, just the flesh. Avocado is great. It's a very, very healthy fat. Coconut oil is another really, really healthy fat. So again, that's a very, very short list. There are endless possibilities of things that you could add to your dog's diet. Strawberries, another really great one. So lots and lots of things we can add to our dog's diet to really, really get like the most impact. But I think it's really important that we know how to read a pet food label, and calculating carbohydrates is just one of the ways to read a pet food label, so that even if this is what we can do, which for a lot of people, that's what we can do, right? Even if that's what don't feel bad about it. Feel good in knowing that you are learning as much as you can, and you are learning how to read the labels so you can be as educated as possible and in getting the most bang for your buck. Don't get, because look, these labels can look amazing, but they're not necessarily representative of what's actually in that bag. So just, continue to educate yourself, learn how to read a pet food label. Again, learning how to calculate carbohydrates is just one piece of the equation, but it's a very important piece, because we want that number to be as low as possible. And I think can do better than what I picked off the shelf, but I just ran into the store yesterday and picked a couple of bags just so that I could do this. And again, like I said, I'm gonna donate them, because a fed dog and a fed cat is much better than a starving one. So I hope that was helpful. And I also, I mentioned it earlier about the challenge going around on social media. January 17th would have been Betty White's 100th birthday. So if you are able to make a donation on that date to your local rescue, animal shelter, humane society, whatever it may be, please do so. That's what I'm going to be doing. I have a box of stuff that I'm going to be doing that. So with that, I hope this was informative. And Susan, I hope you take a moment to go to the Planet Paws website. Let me see if I can put a link in here. I'm not sure if I can put a link in the comments while I'm going live, but let's see, Susan, if that'll go or not. Maybe I'll put it on the screen for you. So Dr. Karen Becker did help create some balanced recipes. Fortunately, there are lots for dogs. There's only one for cats. I keep checking back. But it worked. Thank you. Okay, good. Definitely check that out, because I think, that's how we evolved. I went from feeding kibble to feeding a really, really, really crappy homemade diet to my pets. And I can admit that, because I can look back on it and say that was really horrible. I would never do that again. But it evolved to, I fed a better home cooked diet to my pets, and now we feed a raw food diet. So with that, wherever you are in your pet food journey, you're doing the best you can. I know that the fact that you're here, the fact that you're watching this video, means that you want to do better. And I appreciate you so much, because I love your pets just as much as you do, even though I've never met them. So y'all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your Sunday, or whatever day it happens to be that you're watching this. And I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.